Hey guys, one question. Do you like to puncture? Do you think puncture is the most powerful and broken skill in the rogue class? No? Then you should definitely check out this video. So this is the so-called puncture rogue, or you could also call it Andariel'S poison rogue. So maybe you're still on the big hunt for the best item in the game, the so-called Harlequin Crest Shako, and you got a bit frustrated because you still couldn't find it, but instead you dropped some other Uber uniques, for example the Andariel'S Visage helmet, and you were like, well, what the hell am I going to do with this? There's no meta build right now that utilizes it. Well, then this video could be very interesting for you. So this rogue tries to utilize Andariel'S Visage in the best way possible, and it's very fun because we are only playing with Puncture as our damage skill. So Puncture is not here for damage, but we use Puncture to trigger all of our lucky hit interactions. So, like mentioned, we have this Andariel'S Visage lucky hit that says we have a 20% chance to proc it, and then we will release this big poison explosion. And this poison can stack up quite easily, very comparable to poison imbuement with Twisting Blades Rogue, for example. And the other big damage source we have is the X-Foil Ring. So X-Foil Ring also gives us a huge poison explosion. Actually, this explosion is much bigger than the one from Andariel'S Visage, and this is where most of the damage comes from. So this poison explosion can go up to 7 or 8 million if you crit. So right now you saw one for 6 million, for example. And yeah, it's just a big amount of damage, and all you need to do is cast your Puncture basically. So yeah, this is the build. I have to give big credits and a big shout out to the YouTuber Xario. So I discovered this build on his channel first, and he was doing all of this fundamental work and basically the base ground of this build. And I kind of took this base ground, this fundamental, and tried to further enhance it. So I tried to put it on the next tier, you could say. And I think I quite achieved this goal, because with the interaction of this, with the inclusion of the X-Foil Ring, I'm able to reach this crazy, insane damage numbers. So yeah, shout out to Xario, very nice YouTuber, check him out. But this is my version of his build, you could say. So yeah, let's talk about skill rotation quickly. So basically, we are just spamming Puncture, very simple. But there are some little things you need to keep in mind as well. So we are also playing with another basic skill from the rogue class called Invigorating Strike. So Invigorating Strike is needed to trigger our passive, Close Quarters Combat. So we need to cast the Cutthroat skill from time to time, and then we will get this huge damage and attack speed bonus from our passive. So every 3 to 5 seconds you should do one cast of Invigorating Strike, and this way you will maintain your passive active all the time. And you will also get some additional lucky hit chance of 16% as an effect from Invigorating Strike itself. So what you do is you cast, every 3 or 5 seconds you cast Invigorating Strike, and then you also should cast your Smoke Grenade as often as possible. Your Smoke Grenade will not only daze enemies in this build, but it will also instantly freeze them. Or at least you have a chance up to 80% to instantly freeze them. How do we freeze them? Well, we play with the Frostbitten aspect, and together with our unique boots, the Panting Greaves, which are chilling enemies all the time, and the Frostbitten aspect in our gloves, we are able to freeze enemies that get hit by our Smoke Grenade. So this helps us with survivability and also gives us a huge damage multiplier, since Rogue is able to deal much more damage to enemies that are frozen. So again, we cast Invigorating Strike every 3 or 5 seconds. We cast Smoke Grenade, and then spam our Puncture. Here I also play with, in this version I was playing with Poison Trap, but Poison Trap is actually not needed, and I already removed it from the skill bar and also the skill tree. So we are only playing with 4 skills. Very stylish. Here you can see the boss fight. The boss fight is maybe one small disadvantage of this build. So there are rogue builds that are capable of dealing with the boss much more efficient and kill it much more, much quicker, much easier. So maybe you guys have some ideas for the boss fight. Yeah, I didn't had any ideas yet. Maybe we can do some item switches. But yeah, well, if you have ideas, just put them in the comments. Okay, so let's now talk about the gear. So this build, for this build, Andariel'S Visage is kind of mandatory. Actually, I could imagine that you try out this build without Andariel'S Visage, because most of the damage comes from the X-Fel ring, as mentioned. But it's recommended to play both X-Fel and Andariel'S helmet. And this build is also called Andariel'S Poison Rogue. So yeah, I guess it's kind of mandatory as well. But you could try out even without Andariel'S Visage if you like. So these two items here, they give us the damage that we need. So Andariel'S Visage applies 16,000 poison damage over time, and X-Fel Ring applies up to 44k damage as a huge poison explosion. So yeah, very nice. And Puncture is the skill that just triggers these lucky hits. Well, how do we trigger X-Fel actually? X-Fel is triggered by a bugged version of Bursting Venoms. So it seems that Bursting Venoms is also bugged right now, and when you cast or when you trigger Bursting Venoms to cast this toxic pool on the ground, this toxic pool of poison will also proc your other lucky hits. So for example, X-Fel. And this is quite broken because it actually has a pretty high lucky hit chance, it seems. So one pool of Bursting Venoms is able to trigger multiple X-Fel poison explosions actually. So this is very powerful broken synergy here. So for that reason we need to play with Bursting Venoms and Pestilent Points. So Pestilent Points will apply Poison Imbuement on our Puncture skill, and this Puncture, the Poison Imbued Puncture, will then trigger our Bursting Venoms, which will further trigger our X-Fel explosions and also Andariel explosions. So yeah, this is also kind of mandatory to play with these two offensive aspects here. Here I have two different versions. This is the Doombringer version. If you don't have Doombringer, I also have it right. I don't have it right now. Then you just use a you just play a normal dagger and put the Bursting Venoms aspect on the dagger instead. And then on your amulet you put this cheats aspect, and this kinda compensates the damage reduction that you would get from Doombringer. So this is not too far away from the Doombringer version. So you also have a lot of damage reduction here. So yeah, these are the two differences in these versions. But if you have a Doombringer, then just play with the Doombringer. It's very good. Okay, so some other nice synergies in this build. We play with Temerity, since we have such nice healing. So Andariel'S Visage gives us also 3% lifesteal. Since we have so nice healing, we can benefit from Temerity. Temerity will give us up to 80% barrier, a barrier up to 80% of our maximum life. And especially in the Doombringer version, we are reaching about 22,000 life. So the Temerity will give us a huge additional health that will go up to 40k. So very nice for survivability. And also this has some further synergies with our damage. Because since we are playing with a barrier all the time with Temerity, we can put the conceited aspect on our crossbow. And this way we will deal 50% more damage. And this says not only for skills, but it says instead we are dealing more damage. So this will also increase the damage of our X-Fel and Andariel'S Visage. And this is how the big damage numbers are generated for this build, because we have conceded on our crossbow. So yeah, very nice synergy here. And the last synergy is, like mentioned, we play Penitent Grief together with Frostbitten aspect on the gloves. And with this combination we are able to freeze enemies basically all the time. So we just need to drop Smoke Grenade, and Smoke Grenade will most of the time freeze our enemies. And also we deal more damage to them. Very nice. On the gloves, you can I can recommend you to play with both lucky hit affixes, so 5% chance to heal and 30% chance to slow, because we have some further interactions with like synergies with slowing enemies in our Paragon board. So yeah, this for the gloves. And we also play with Ajira's Kanjar, which is very nice for additional lucky hit chance, damage to crowd control enemies, and 30% attack speed. So this is the gear. Let's talk about the skills quickly. So we are playing with Puncture, but we don't need to put more than 1 point into Puncture, because we don't need the damage from Puncture, but we just want to proc our lucky hits. So 1 point is just enough. And then obviously with Fundamental Puncture for this unique effect. Then Invigorating Strike, we want to play with Primary Invigorating Strike for additional 16% lucky hit chance. Then we take all of this defensive passives and also Stutter Step for more movement speed. You can take Methodical or Discipline Shadow Step, it doesn't matter that much. Here I put 3 points into Rugged because damage over time is kinda buggy right now and deals much more damage than it should. Also Concussive for more critical strike chance and Trick Attacks for further CC if needed. We play with all offensive passives instead, except Weapon Mastery. We don't need Weapon Mastery for this build since our damage comes from our gear, not from our skills. But Weapon Mastery is also bugged right now, so it's not recommended to invest points into Weapon Mastery at all right now as a rogue class. So yeah, then Countering Smoke Grenade for further cooldown reduction of Smoke Grenade. We try to put as many points as we can in Deadly Venom and Debilitating Toxin. Sorry, I never can pronounce this correctly. And a Chemical Advantage for further attack speed. And very important, I have 6 points in Frigid Finesse because I have +3 ranks on my Amulet. So this is a huge damage multiplier for Rogue. We get 60% against frozen enemies. So very nice for our freezing frozen energy synergy. Then 3 points into Alchemist Fortune for more lucky hit chance. 3 points into Haste. And Close Quarters Combat for this huge multiplier. So yeah, these are the skills. Vampiric Powers. You definitely want to play with Undying, so this helps you additionally with healing. So we have Andariel'S Visage and Undying for healing, and this will guarantee our temerity to be procced all the time, basically. Then Ravenous for this huge attack speed bonus, very powerful. Then Prey on the Weak together with Accursed Touch. This combination makes enemies vulnerable all the time. And I'm already preparing for the upcoming Abattoir of Zir event. And I think every class will need a way to make enemies vulnerable for longer than 3 seconds, let's say. So I'm not a big fan of the Exploit Glyph. Since I think it will just be not enough in this new event. So I like to have this combination of Accursed Touch and Prey on the Weak for additional vulnerable damage. And then the last part is kind of flexible. You can even play with Hectic, and I can recommend you playing with Hectic. So every 5th basic skill you cast, and we are spamming Puncture all the time basically, as you saw. Every 5th cast of Puncture will reduce active cooldowns by 2 seconds. So this will allow us to even further spam our Smoke Grenade. And this is pretty fun and also powerful because we can much more often freeze our enemies. And this way we will increase our damage and survivability by a lot. So yeah, I can recommend you playing with Hectic, but an alternative would be to play with Flowing Veins. So here you would get 60% more damage over time, and this would boost your poison damage from Andariel'S Visage. So yeah, these are your 2 versions here, but yeah, I can recommend you to play with Hectic. So this is my advice. And yeah. And lastly, let's talk about the Paragon board. So here I have 2 different versions. I will also put them in the planner here to the left. So this is your starting Paragon. We play with Diminish in the starting board for reduced physical damage and more armor. We play Closer Glyph on the Cheap Shot board for even more reduced damage while wielding a melee weapon. Then Devious on Tricks of the Trade for more damage and armor bonus. Larina's Instinct with Control Glyph. So here we max out all of these intelligence nodes for the maximum amount of damage versus crowd controlled. Very important for our passive. Here it's also a very nice board for resistances. And then Cunning Stratagem board with Turf Glyph, so additional 10% damage reduction against close enemies, and up to 200 more armor. And we have the No Witness board with Kenny. Here we get 8% maximum life node, very nice, and with Kenny 10% more damage after using non-physical damage. So yeah, this is the starting board. And if you are about to play in the Andariel'S Zir event, I have made this this board for the new Tears of Blood Glyph. Right now I believe that Cheap Shot is the best board for this glyph, so I will probably make an update video for that. So I need to change this in all of my builds. So the Cheap Shot board gives us the most, like the biggest radius, and this will give us more than 1000% damage on a simulated level 50 Tears of Blood glyph. So yeah, I think this is the way to go for the best, for the biggest amount of damage. And then we needed to rearrange a bit the glyphs here, so we cut one board, and then I needed to put Closer Glyph on Tricks of the Trade, and the Turf Glyph goes into Larena's Instinct, and then I put the Control Glyph instead on the No Witness board, and here we get 44 intelligence at least, so yeah, also very good. So yeah, this is the board for Andariel'S Zir. Okay guys, that was the build. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have Andariel'S Visage, then maybe you'll try out this build and tell me in the comments, write me in the comments how you like it, if it's successful for you or not. So yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next one. Leave me a like if you enjoy my content, and have a nice day. Bye bye.